Hello, welcome back. I'm Noreen Burke, owner of Call Clutter Fairy Home Organizing, and this is my YouTube channel, The Crafty Organizer. Today, I want to go over some of my favorite before and after organizing projects and discuss how I approached breaking them down. One of the number one thing that I'm getting right now through so many of the photos that you're sending me is, how do I start? I'm so overwhelmed. How do I break this down so I can efficiently and effectively organize it? So I'm going to go through some of my favorite projects and show what I looked for first, how I broke the categories down, and how I used the storage at the very end. So let's get started. The first room I want to go over is a sewing room. Now, this particular client had gotten these racks for free, and of course, if you've got a storage issue and something is given to you, I've done the same thing. You make use with what you have, but these particular units were not helping her to stay organized. They made it very difficult because they were on wheels and they were two-sided, so she would have to spin these around to get full access to everything, and because she was already tight on space, things would end up going on the ground around it, which meant everything had to get shoved aside every time she wanted to get to one of these racks. So, if you've watched my videos before, you know I love these stainless steel wire shelves. I think they're amazing. So we put two of those in her room. One of them was on wheels so that it could roll out, but we also made sure that the things that were hidden in that back corner were the things that she very seldom needed, and we discussed this at length because it would be difficult to move. The other thing that we did was we used these storage bins so that she could break down her fabrics by type and by color. Then she had these under the bed storage bins that she loved, and we used those for the larger, bulkier pieces of fabric that wouldn't quite fit in the storage bins. So using under the bed storage for fabric is a great way if you don't have built-in cabinets or another place to put them. The other thing I focused on for this particular client is she had a closet in this room, but she didn't have any shelving in it. So I added shelves so that we could get all of the small containers that she already had and all of the small bits and baubles organized so that she could easily have access to them and easily get it on and off the shelf. Now, when you're doing shelves, please focus on having single access to things. Try not to put anything in front of or behind because you want to be able to grab it easily, but most importantly, you want to be able to put it away easily. The other thing I want to mention is if you have heavier things, put them on the waist level shelves so that you can get easy access to them without hurting yourself. The next area we're going to look at is this small kitchen. This was an adorable little one-bedroom condo that I got to work in. And as you could see, there was about 8 inches of counter space next to the stove. But she had added these IKEA drawers, which were great. So I did a mock-up for her, suggesting that we put the bins side by side and move the stove over. This would give her more counter space, and while the after picture isn't the best, it gave her so much more usable space. The next is a garage multi-purpose space. One of the first things I noticed is she had a lot of empty boxes, and I see this very frequently. Now, I use boxes all of the time. I repurpose them, I cover them, so I understand keeping some of them. But most often I see a collection of boxes just because people aren't quite sure what to do with them. They're not sure if they might need them. So if you're looking at your space and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, be honest at looking at those boxes and see if you can either break them down and store them flat or if you can let them go. Once we got rid of a lot of those extra items though, I also added a shelving unit for her, and we were able to really Tetris in the things that she could store. But this gave her a functional crafting space at the front of her garage with storage in the back that you can't see, and she still has a functional workbench area for her laundry. Moving on to shoe storage, this is one of my longtime favorite clients, and she had this little strange storage area right off of her bedroom that she stored her shoes in. And one day she said, "Noreen, can you do anything for this?" And the second I saw it, I got so excited and couldn't wait to create this for her. So I got some simple brackets and melamine shelves, and we installed those. Here's a maximizing shoe storage tip. Most of us have been taught to set our shoes with the widest parts side by side. But if you take one of those shoes and set it next to it going the opposite direction, you end up having extra space. And even though it's only a little bit of space, collectively with multiple pairs of shoes, you will gain so much extra storage space. We were able to get over 100 pairs of shoes in this little area. We kept flats and slippers in these bins below. And then I was even able to set up some of her pretty bags and boxes up at the top, but that will also act as additional space when she adds more shoes. Next, we're going to look at a playroom. Now, this particular family was getting rid of baby items, so that helped a lot. But I noticed that all of the items that they had were being stored flat and stacked on top. This is actually a surprisingly big space waster. So we went through, pulled out everything, and got the likes with the likes, meaning sizes, and were able to put it back on shelves so that things were similarly sized, and this will take up the least amount of space. This particular homeowner had already put in custom cabinets in her dining area because she is an avid crafter and a beautifully artistic person. With so many different mediums that she worked with, though, the space wasn't quite working for her. One of the things I like being able to see in person that I can't always do through pictures is look at the surrounding areas. In this particular thing, I was able to see that this cabinet between her crafting area and her kitchen was being underutilized. So we reorganized some of her food items to open up this cabinet to fit in bolts of fabric, which was a great way to use this space. And then we used the coordinating fabrics that really looked nice with the handmade boxes that she had made and displayed those for easier access as well. The last thing I did here that I really loved is when I took out the shelf to accommodate the bolts of fabric, I set it on top of this rolling filing cabinet that she had, and it just so happened to fit perfectly to give her the perfect space for her printer, and this freed up more surface space for her crafting. So how many of you have a catch-all space, closet, or room? This particular family had a room that they didn't know what to do with, so sadly it became the catch-all for everything that didn't fit into the rest of the house. Now they really had hoped that this would be an arts and crafts room or an office, so the first thing I noticed when I walked in is they had one of the shelves that I love so much. This was super exciting for me because it meant that I could utilize this, but move it in a different place. They had a desk already, and they also had a ton of storage bins that I could use. By moving the storage rack behind the door, we were able to put the miscellaneous things that they had that weren't so aesthetically pleasing and store them behind, so they still have super easy access to it, but they're not seeing it unless they're sitting at the desk. This also allowed me to pull out this beautiful entertainment center that was behind the door and make it more of a focal point. It also has a pull-out surface area so that when they want to craft, they have an additional space, and all of their craft supplies are now organized within this one cabinet. This became a much more efficiently used space, and because they already had so many of the boxes, they didn't have to buy any supplies. It was just repurposing what they had, including this bookcase, which they didn't even have in this room. They had it for a donation because they didn't know what to do with it. So now I flanked it so that it visually looks more balanced when they walk in, but as they add more craft interests, it already has a home. Paperwork is one of those things that I will forever hear about being overwhelming, and I totally understand why. And one of the things I see happen most often is people will get several boxes to try and contain the paperwork, but it isn't necessarily organized yet. So what ends up happening is you have multiple boxes of just miscellaneous things in. And that's what had happened to this homeowner. So once we were able to really separate the multiple boxes, we also noticed that many of the shelves just had things laid flat horizontally instead of taking up all of that vertical space and being stood upright. So we literally just spent 2 days and broke down every category. We were able to get all of the magazines together. We were able to sort out paperwork by year and then by what type of paperwork it was. So each section of these bookshelves now contain the specific media related to his interest, and he has easy access to all of it. Now here's a large office where something similar had happened, but they were also running a business out of here. So they were trying to use the workspace, and then as more paperwork came in or more items came in that they didn't know what to do with, they would just set it in piles. So we did the same technique. We got our sorting boxes out. As the boxes became full of each type of thing, we would then go ahead and box it up and set it aside. Once we were all done, this room was so meticulously and beautifully organized. I have to confess, this was probably one of the most enjoyable jobs I had ever had. We were in here for about 2 weeks, but this was 30 years worth of a company and personal files, and we were able to break things down very specifically so that they could easily find anything. I want to help you understand how to break down categories a little bit more. I'm going to use crafting as an example. So let's just say we have scrapbooking, knitting, and stamping. So as you find anything that has to do with scrapbooking, it goes in one of those large boxes. Anytime you find something that has to do with knitting, whether it's a book, a pattern, a knitting needle, or even yarn, it goes in one big box. And then once you find anything that has to do with stamping, whether it's ink, stamp pads, the blocks, specialized paper, or ink pads, it goes in one box. It's just a high level of one category. Once you get through that whole section that you're trying to organize, then you take that completed scrapbook box and you start breaking it down again. So you would pull out all scrapbook idea books. You would pull out all the elements. You would pull out all of the scrapbook paper. And those would become 3 separate categories within scrapbooking. And I know this seems a little bit confusing, but what we ultimately try and do is make it so that when you're looking for X, you can find it. So the example I usually try and give is if you're going to a grocery store and you're looking for a canned item, you go to the canned food aisle. Within the canned food aisle, they have things separated by fruits, vegetables, maybe tomato sauces. So you get to go there. And then once you know whether it's a fruit, a vegetable, or a tomato sauce, you still get to break it down by the specific type of vegetable. And then even within, say, corn, there's different brands. There's salted, unsalted, white corn, yellow corn. So that's how we're approaching this category system. You go with that high level of the category or the canned food aisle, and then you break it down by what type do you want? Do you want a fruit or a vegetable? Or in this case of scrapbooking, do you want your idea books or do you want actual scrapbook paper? And then you break it down further, in this case again of the vegetables. Do you want peas, corn, or beans? Well, in your scrapbook paper, do you want printed, do you want solid, or do you want one of your coordinated paper packs? So if you approach it from that high level and keep funneling down, you are going to have such an easier time organizing. So let's get back into this. So staying in line with breaking down those categories, here's how we approached a large collection of fishing lures. This particular client had over 100,000 fishing lures. It was an amazingly impressive collection and one that they absolutely loved and prized. So here's how we approached this. We initially just broke things down on a very high level of what was the major color in these fishing lures, because a lot of them were very multicolored. After that, we could start taking the colors and breaking them down. So in this case, they had blue. A huge section was blue, but it was light blue, dark blue, black and blue, blue and red, blue and green, blue and yellow, blue with shimmer. So all we did was break these down so that you could see the varying levels of blues, and then we would continue and break them down by size. So as you can see from this green board, we had all of the same lures put together, but then we had them done by size so that he could easily find them by the color, by the hue, by the size, and then we were able to get them all onto this beautiful cabinet that he had so that he could go through just like a library. These were all organized by color. Within each color, they were organized by size, and then the different boxes that we had were because they were different styles of fishing lures. So this was such a fun job, and he absolutely loved it when it was all said and done, because he could find any one of his favorite lures in a second. I've been inviting you to share pictures of your areas that you're having troubles with so that I can help you virtually. I am so excited. I've chosen 8 people that I'm hoping to get to work with. So we're beginning the chatting phases, and I cannot wait to show you what we get to do with those spaces. Now, if you didn't make it into this first cut, don't worry, I will be doing this again, but I'm going to go ahead and get through this first phase of people that I get to work with, and I will let you know as soon as that opens up again, probably the end of September or beginning of October. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to give it a like. Also comment which area you found most useful. And YouTube does a little thing that's weird every once in a while, so please make sure you have clicked subscribe. That way, as I'm going through new videos showing you how to organize, you don't miss the next one. Your support is allowing me to reach out to more of the viewers and help them get organized and show these videos to you so that you can get organized too. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in a few days. Bye.